Hey everybody, welcome back to my studio. We're doing another 8x8" canvas in my video series where I show you all kinds of different techniques that are great for beginners and also for experts. Easy, fun, and they work great. Anyway, so this is an 8x8" canvas. Today I'm doing a swipe with silicone. So I've got this is just a laminator sheet that I laminated and then cut in half. So that's great for pulling the colors across. All my paint are mixed with Floetrol and then thinned with water, and they have a little bit of silicone in them, all except for my swipe color, which is this dark green. I started with a phthalo green and tweaked it a little bit to get exactly the shade I wanted. And then I have green oxide, burnt umber, metallic copper, and white house paint. So those are my colors for the swipe, but I'm not just doing any old swipe today. I'm gonna do a swipe that then gets embellished with like a profile. So you may have seen pictures of, there's beautiful profile swipes. Usually they're skinnier canvases with like a person's face and then their hair is just flowing, and it's gorgeous. But on an 8x8 canvas, I don't have enough space for that. So I'm doing an evergreen tree. So it's going to be basically 1/2 of an evergreen tree flowing into my colors. And then I'll have either brown or white sort of as the negative space on the other side of the tree. So I think it'll look really cool. I've done a couple with people's faces on the skinnier canvases. I've never done one with a tree, and I've never done one on a square canvas. So let's give it a shot. Okay, so I'm actually gonna have this be the edge and I'm gonna swipe down from it. So I know I've been gesturing like one side to the other, but I'm actually gonna do it coming this direction. So there's my swipe color. So when doing a swipe, you know, you can make puddles and then swipe across. You can just kind of scatter the paint randomly. But one of the best ways that I've seen is with stripes. That way you ensure that you're having lots and lots of colors crossing each other. That way you don't get, you know, part of the canvas covered with great cells and then the rest of the canvas covered with these blobs of paint. So if I wanted to be really careful with it, I probably would have done it individual layer by layer instead of doing all the brown first and then all the green. But I think it'll be all right. And I have quite thin layers here because I have a very small canvas to get cells from. If you're doing a bigger canvas, you can have larger layers. And then white. Okay, and then I'll just fill in these spaces so that everything's pretty much covered. Because you are dragging paint across, it doesn't have to be completely covered. I do want it to be lots of this dark brown. And the edges, I'm just gonna dab some paint over the edges to try to get them already developing a bit of pattern. And then hopefully as I swipe, some more pattern will come across. So the next step is your swipe color, which, yeah, there's no silicone in this. Since there's silicone in all the other colors, you don't really need it in the swipe color. Even though we're going to be painting over a lot of this with another color after the fact, we still want to have a complete coating of paint, just so that the textures are all the same. And then just bring that level all the way down to where it touches your other colors. Okay. There we go. Here's the swipe color. Move these out of the way, and then get yourself a paper towel ready to catch all the drips when you swipe. Okay, so I like to touch this not at the very edge of the canvas, because then it kind of scrapes it down to bare, but about a 1/4 inch back. You make sure the entire thing is touching, and then just gently pull it across. Gonna quickly add a little bit here on the back, and then wipe it off. Wow, I must have had way too much of the swipe color, because that's really, really green. I knew I had a pretty big layer, but that's not how I expected this to look. Let me see if I can pull up some more cells with a torch. And if I can't, I might have to improvise. So let me just pick up the canvas and give it a tilt and see if I can kind of slide things back. First though, I'm gonna just walk it this way to cover this edge. I have a feeling all my cells are gonna go wonky. Yep, my cells are going wonky. So I have a new plan, and this plan is cover all the way to the edges and all the way across the bottom. Get that covered. And then I'm going to add more of my colored paint and swipe again. Okay, well, that's a mess. Let me clean my hands and then we'll restart. Let's try this again. The cells that I did get were really pretty. So I'm gonna do those color layers again if I have the paint for it. What did I do? Brown and then green. And this time I'm not going over the edges because they're already covered. And then I had white. And then this copper. Okay, these layers are not nearly as nice looking as they were before, but they have silicone in them, and honestly, a swipe has saved many a painting for me. If you ever have a painting that just fails, throw on some layers of paint with silicone in it and swipe, and it will rescue nearly all of them. Okay, let's try this again. So now there's still the same layer here, but it's a lot less paint because I've already pulled a lot of it across. So it shouldn't be as overpowering when I swipe again. This is looking more promising. I actually have cells halfway up. Let me use a torch and see if I can bring up a few more cells further up. Doesn't look like it. It's still quite cool. It's not how I envisioned it, but that's how things go with fluid painting. Okay, so I have a big chunk of white here. So just take a little bit of paper towel and sort of pull what you don't want over the side. It stretches the pattern, breaks it up. I'll do the same thing over here. I'm dipping it in some of that green swiping color and then just pulling it across. That's still really cool looking. I think it's gonna make a really neat effect when I make the tree. And there's definitely plenty of space to put a tree on there. I had wondered if the bubbles were gonna pop up way too close and I wouldn't even have space for a tree. That wasn't my problem today. But that's okay. Fluid painting is always a bit of a stab in the dark, even if you know what you're doing. So it keeps it fun. And there's a lot of touch-up that can happen afterwards with a brush, but these really cool swirls and stuff, it's just better to get it done while it's wet, because then the paint can keep kind of dripping just a little bit and smooth it out for you. Okay, I think I'm happy with this. Let me show you a close-up, and then once it dries, I'll show you how to then paint the negative space on the outside. Okay, here we go. So it ended up really pretty. I mean, look at those cells. They're just cute. Lots of colors and layers. I really like how they turned out. The color combination is really nice. And actually the spacing worked out really well because we've got a big chunk of brown here, kind of like the ground or the trunk. So the tip of the tree will be here, and then it'll kind of go out. And I don't know that it's going to be a straight, I don't know that it's going to have negative space all around. The tree may, you know, break the edge kind of here. We'll see. I'll show you that next step. Okay, my painting has dried, and it's time for me to paint the silhouette. So I took a picture of this, and then I just used my phone to kind of sketch out basically what I wanted to do, because this green color is so dark, I didn't think I could actually sketch on it with a pencil. So I just did like a digital sketch. I like the way it is, so I've put some reference marks on here, and now I'm going to paint the white to leave the silhouette of half of an evergreen tree. So I've got a couple brushes here, a finer tipped one and sort of like a slant tipped one. And the paint that I'm using is white house paint, which is the same color that I used here. And it's pretty thick. It's almost pure house paint. I put a little bit of Floetrol in there just to help it flow and not leave brush marks as much as possible. So if you've got a light colored swipe color, I like to use a pencil to sketch out the profile you're doing. If you've got like a person's face, I like to print out a picture of their face on cardstock or something like that, and then put it up against the canvas and trace around it, and then paint over your sketched line. For this though, I'm painting my line. So hopefully that works out okay. After you've kind of sketched your edge and you want to fill it in, make sure you have plenty of paint. Especially if you're covering with a lighter color, you want to have enough so it makes a nice thick coat on top. Thin coats can leave brush marks, they can be transparent, and then you have to do another one on top. The thicker your coat, the more it will look like an actual pour instead of a brushed on thing later. So I like to not so much brush it to get it to the right consistency, but have a lot of paint on there and then just dab it around until it makes a smooth coating. Okay, so that's my bottom edge. Let me get my top edge and I'll just keep sketching. So I've got the outline there of a pretty basic evergreen Christmas kind of tree. It's hard to tell exactly how it'll look until I've got the rest of the white poured on the side, so now I'll do that. So now that I see it here, I can tell that my tree is too thin. I was trying to go conservative, but I ended up going the wrong way. So I'm gonna try to just use a palette knife to remove some of this sketched layer. And when the white paint is dry, I'm going to come in with the green and just touch it up. But my tree is looking too scrawny. Okay, that's looking a lot better already. Just kind of straightening out some of those lines. I'd made the lines kind of swooping, which it was a nice stylized effect. It just ended up being too slender for what I was actually doing. Okay, so the last thing, I've covered my edges. Oops, I didn't cover this top edge. So I've covered all my edges. I've got a pretty thick, smooth coat of white all across here. I just need to clean up the edges so that they look good. So I've got my white negative space the way I like it. Obviously, it doesn't look finished because I need to come back in with the green and touch up these spots here where there's the little white streaks. But I will show it to you when it is finished. So here it is all finished. I finished touching up the green edges, cleaned up those edges, but also, instead of making it a really stark edge, I added just little brushwork to make it look slightly more natural. But anyway, I think it turned out really cool, and that's how you do a silicone swipe with a profile added later.